There is no character arc, deeper meaning, or satisfying ending without conflict in a story. We love fiction that hinges on a protagonist wanting something they can't have, obstacles to overcome to make it to the other side. It is deeply human to relate to a character like this. Hi, I'm C-Mike, and I hope you're having a good day. I've been playing a lot of Shadowdark, and it's a deadly, higher stakes game than core D&D, with lower HP, typically more damage, no dark vision, and limited gear. But I think there's a problem. Shadowdark relies a lot on random tables, random encounters, random conflict. Though I'm a big fan of random tables and random monsters, I do think we need to talk about intentional conflict in our stories and our adventures, so that the story, whether the players survive or not, they feel the intended story of the encounter. So let's look at how you can ensure that the conflict in your games are memorable and exciting and appropriate for the story. Let's start with the basics. Did you know that there are only 7 types of conflict you can have in your adventure, in your story? I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but we need to rewind the clock for just a moment and ask the question, what is conflict? That way we're at the least talking about the same thing in this video. In a story, a conflict is a clash of opposing forces against a character's own pursuit of goals. Therefore, characters must overcome the opposing force to achieve their goals. Characters can't just get what they want. There's something universal in all of us as people, believing that if we want something, we have to work towards it. Conflict in itself is tied to the human experience, likely a cosmic experience since the dawn of time, fundamental to the existence of all things. It's how we came to be, evolved, adapted, survived, as therapists might put it, the shared generational trauma that we all have, as far back as ancient Rome, ancient Egypt. For context, that's about 5,000 years ago, which, by the way, is 5 times the lifespan of your typical D&D elf. It's ingrained in us. It's a major factor in whether a scene in a show is good or bad. Is there conflict? Are there empathetic stakes that people, humans, care about that function as the foundation to this scene? Hey, these videos take a long time to make, especially because I'm editing a bunch of D&D and Shadowdark games that are going to be released on the channel, and I'm editing full-time for clients like Corridor Digital. It takes a long time to get these videos made, and I really like making these videos and sharing my opinion about the hobby and these games. You do me the favor of hitting the like button and leaving a comment telling me what you enjoyed about the video or something that you hope to see in a future video. That would go a long way, and I would appreciate it a lot. Thank you. First, we have man versus nature. This is as old as mankind itself, surviving natural forces in the setting, like weather, animals, or climate changes, sandstorms, blizzards, wildfires, floods, or even the beasts and monsters that live in it. Often the themes that use this conflict are preservation, chaos, or chaos versus order, destruction. This is why disaster movies and Jumanji and Jurassic Park are so exciting. That's why it's so cool when Chris Pratt is a dinosaur wrangler. He's mastered and conquered nature. As a DM, I do like to typically put my monsters in nature. It removes the morality of evil from their alignment. It focuses on their need to survive by eating, sleeping, protecting their young, and finding a mate, which often captures the feeling of a more simple or ancient world for a fantasy setting. This also decouples demons from being purely evil like Christian demons and devils, and allows me and my players to explore fiends differently than what media has raised us on in our Western culture. Number 2, person versus society. This is when your character is in direct opposition to the societal norms or changes in the setting. This can cover a bunch of otherisms, oppressions, political conflict, the rise to power, the fall from power, conquering other nations, or putting a stop to war itself. But then we go to number 3, man versus man, or person versus person. The classic protagonist versus antagonist, or rival versus rival, or hero versus villain. Then let's jump over to man versus self, the most inner form of conflict, whether their objective or goal is in opposition to their own values, beliefs, or morals. And of course, we can then jump to man versus fate, when a character struggles against their destiny, and the fate typically wins. We don't want to take agency away from our players in this case, but that doesn't mean everything doesn't build up to a conclusion, like a final boss. Building up to finally fighting and defeating Strahd is a perfect example of this. Fate is against our players. They have to defeat Strahd to continue on. Then we actually jump over to man versus technology. From evil robots taking over the world to good robots who believe they deserve rights, or mad scientists meddling with science until it completely goes wrong. This isn't limited to science fiction though. It is deeply rooted in fantasy, medieval fantasy, and even neo-medieval fantasy. A great example is the lost technology of the ancient world, from ancient Greece to ancient Rome, and even ancient Egypt. The things that they were able to do back then, and often feel like these wouldn't exist in our medieval fantasy or medieval setting. And actually, they just might. Like when steam automated doors were used by the ancient Greeks, this is perfect for a dungeon. But at the end of the day, it's the exploration of existential questions about how society and people respond to advancements in technology. And it shows a non-human perspective, typically a clockwork one. And finally, grab your wands, scrolls, and brooms, because we have man versus the supernatural. The forces of the supernatural work outside the laws of nature, even though a single fairy flying by is supernatural. Just because you're in a fantasy world doesn't count as a supernatural force in the sense of conflict. The supernatural force has to be a direct opposition to your character's goals. That can be a mage or a magical monster not from this world or this region or from the dark forest. As much as the fantasy genre can use technology as a conflict, science fiction can also use supernatural. This often leads to changing the word supernatural to unknown, giving the cosmic horror genre like Alien. All right, now we know all 7 kinds of conflict. Another person, self, nature, society, fate, technology, and supernatural. If you as a dungeon master or even just players write these down and practice looking for these conflicts in each other's choices around the table, set each other up, and you will know how to pay them off, know how to lean into them and play yes and more appropriately to the setting, the tone, or the choices that everyone's making. DMs who know these conflicts will know how to better implement a thematical appropriate encounter in the adventure, or provide thematical conflict to a player's backstory when it comes up. You will have so much more fun making better stories together because you're going to be more in sync about the conflict in the adventure. But there lies a question. Can we create a good story without conflict? I hate to burst your bubble, but no. You introduce your characters, you develop them, you create deep relationships, you find out where they live, where they come from, what their dreams are, and how you can empathize with them. But eventually there will be a twist. A complication will occur. The adventure will start. It will rely on some form of external or internal conflict where the characters have to react, where they have to adjust. And finally, we explore the growth of their characters and see how they changed from when we first met them. Conflict is a core aspect of being human in this real world. The natural state of the world is conflict. From surviving the wild to going political to socially controlling people, to have peace in the world. True peace requires the subtle and difficult conflict of working your fucking ass off. That being said, conflict can take a backseat, absolutely. Or the stakes can be just way lower. Like helping the town clean up and prepare for a festival before the holiday. And the town is short-staffed versus fighting an obviously oppressive tyrannical sorcerer. Even though Shadowdark is designed to be a dungeon crawler, it doesn't have to be a dungeon crawler. It's Dungeons and Dragons rules light. It's faster and simpler. It's still a storytelling tool that can help you create amazing adventures. We need to have a solid grasp of how to utilize it intentionally to make our short time in this world and even shorter time around the table more memorable. The conflict is a setup for a player and their agency, revealing the quest, providing problems to solve, laying out the choices for them to choose from, asking them, how do you want to do this? If you like this video, hit the like button and leave a comment. I'll see you on the next one because I got more to do. Bye.